Welcome back to my channel. I'm Traben. These are my tomes, and we've got a lot of books to talk about this week, so we're just gonna jump into it. Hopefully you know the deal by now. I do a weekly rundown of my reads. We have a lot, so we're going to jump into The Girl in the Creek, which was my first read for this week. It is both a blessing and a curse that I read this right after T. Kingfisher's What Moves the Dead, because it has a very similar conceptual premise in that there is a fungal colony that is animating dead people and taking over the minds of creatures in this area. A blessing because we kind of got to see a different author's view of this same scenario, and it was cool in this book to have the perspective chapters from creatures and individuals have been taken over by this kind of hive mind intelligence that is the fungal growth. This has more of a direct explanation as to what the antagonistic force is. It's very clear that it is otherworldly, and therefore it has more of a direct, almost Lovecraftian cosmic horror vibe to it. The characters themselves and the plot of this one are less gothic horror, as was What Moves the Dead, and more just traditional slasher movie monster kind of thing, where you have this wide cast of characters. They all go about doing things and end up in these terrible situations. I don't feel like it's a big spoiler to say not everybody makes it out alive in this one, and it's less about creating those vibes as it is kind of solving the mystery of what's going on and of the personal journey of the protagonist in trying to find out what happened to their brother. All that being said, I will also say it's a little bit of a curse to be right next to T. Kingfisher telling the same kind of story. It was harder for me to get into the prose of this at the start, and that ultimately it ended up a star below What Moves the Dead at 3. Still, if you are a fan of sentient dark forest, which is the reason why I picked this up, it's not quite that, but I do think it will give the same vibes as that kind of story, and does have that darker horror edge to it, has more of the body horror bent to it. So if that's your thing, definitely worth a look, and on the shorter side, so easy to finish as well. The other novel-length book I looked at this week was The Art of the Bookplate by James P. Keenan. This is exactly what it says. It talks about the history of bookplates for a bit, and then the rest of the bulk of the book is just illustrations of various bookplates talking about who the person was and what their bookplate illustrates about their hobbies. I picked this up because I was wanting to create some sort of bookplate or like insignia for the channel and wanted to get some inspiration, and after reading through this I think I have some ideas, although I'm not sure bookplate was quite the direction to go, because bookplates tend to be a lot more busy and intricately detailed than what I'm going for, what I'm hoping to create. And so it was still very interesting and still bookish, and was something that I'm glad I picked up and read because I thought it was pretty neat, and did give me some ideas. So there's that. I gave it 3 stars. It's everything it says on the tin. It's not anything that I think is going to blow anybody's mind, but if you are interested in book plates or interested in art, then it is something that you might want to check out. Next up, we have Alice in Borderland Volumes 5 and 6. I took a little bit of a hiatus from the series for no particular reason. I think I just got kind of, not burnt out on it, but kind of got lost in the shuffle of everything else I was collecting, like Akane Banashi and Witch Hat Atelier. And so I think when you're collecting multiple series, it just so happens that some go a couple of months without you renewing interest or picking up a new volume. I saw some content about Alice in Borderland a few weeks ago that reignited my interest, and so I picked up the next 2 volumes. Turns out I was at a pretty good spot to take a little bit of a break because we're at a major shift from the characters doing certain challenges going into a different category of challenge. So if you're not familiar with Alice in Borderland, everything is card based. So you have different suits of cards represent different types of challenges. For example, the hearts are usually something that toys with your emotions, or like emotionally charged challenges, whereas I think spades is like physical. There's one that's like all around, and there's one that's more like an intellectual challenge. I can't remember which suit is which, but the first half or so of the story has been about collecting the number cards, and once all the number cards were collected, they moved on to the next phase of the game, which started in Volume 5 in facing off the face cards, the Jack, Queens, and Kings of the different groups. And here they are facing off against people who have been in this alternate reality that they find themselves in for far longer than the people we've been following. And the challenges are meant to be much more difficult because you're talking about the highest order of difficulty for these different tasks. So I believe Volume 5 had the King of Clubs, and then Volume 6 started the Jack of Hearts challenge. There are also some side stories in here talking about certain players' first couple of days in Borderland, and those are fun. I really liked hearing the rules for the different challenges, trying to figure out how would I play this, what would my strategy be, and then see how the characters themselves break down the game and what they decide to do. So a lot of fun, really interesting, and some points in here where there were some really clever manipulations and some really difficult choices being made in order for our protagonist to come out on top. So if you are a fan of the kind of dangerous game genre of manga, so like Kaiji, if you've watched Squid Game, for example, and you want something that kind of has that same flavor, this is among the best that I've read. It's still not quite my favorite. I think Liar Game is is my favorite overall, but it's probably second or third at this point. A very strong contender, one that you should definitely pick up if that is your thing. I read Ultimate X-Men Volume 2 by Peach Momoko. Now, I've already sung Peach Momoko's praises on this channel several times before, and the art and culture on display in this volume are still really awesome, and I think really important for anybody who likes that fusion of like Eastern and Western culture in their comics. If you're unaware, the Ultimate X-Men line finds the X-Men characters reimagined as middle school Japanese students, and their powers are a little bit different, and the origins of those powers are a little different. The Ultimate Universe is kind of explained in its totality in the intro bits of these books. What I did find in this one was a bit more, a little bit more of a disconnect between some of the beats and some of the actions in the comic. I know that Peach Momoko is writing up her scripts in Japanese and then having them translated, so I wonder if it's just a matter of that translation not quite working as well as you would like. But the art's still amazing. The cultural notes are still really great to find, that those are continuing into the second volume. I still definitely want to continue this series. I'm picking up the monthly issues as well because I want to support it. And if you are into kind of an alternate take on some of your childhood favorites in the X-Men, this is a really great one to pick up, and something that is so far removed from the usual continuity that I think you would get a kick out of just seeing these characters reimagined in the way that they are. I read through Kaya Book 2. This is another one that I took a long break between Volume 1 and Volume 2 to pick it up for no real good reason. I think Kaya is probably my favorite sci-fantasy comic being printed right now. It is the story of two siblings, well, half-siblings, in Kaya and Jean. And Jean is prophesized to be this like messiah figure. He's a child. He's much younger than Kaya. Well, they're both children, but he's much younger than Kaya, and so he fully embraces and believes that he is the chosen one. Kaya's a little bit more skeptical given what we find out about her backstory in this volume. It makes perfect sense why she would be. But what I find really interesting, so that would be great already on its own, is kind of this petulant child who doesn't know anything about the world but believes he is going to be this great figure and like constantly getting him and his sister into trouble in these fantastic lands. That alone would be enough. But what I think really makes this comic is the framing device is Jean looking back as an adult on his childhood, and you can tell the difference between who he is in this comic and who he is as an adult, how much more appreciative he is of Kaya, and how self-aware he is that the way he's acting is not appropriate. It lacks the wisdom that he now has. So that framing device really helps. But, like I said, even with that absent, the characters, the monsters, the worlds that are on display here, and the action sequences would be enough to sell me on this. I get vibes of something like Johnny Quest or like a really good Daniel Warren Johnson comic in the way that they do the art and the fight scenes. So if you're a fan of science fantasy and you are looking for another really solid story, I would really recommend Kaya. I read through The Nice House by the Sea, Volume 1. So this is the first of what I'm going to assume is a 2-volume set, just like the first arc of this comic was. So this is a sequel series to Nice House by the Lake. And unfortunately, I can't say much about what happens in this book without spoiling it. It relies very heavily on having read Nice House by the Lake. My one caveat would be if you see this and you think it looks cool and you want to check it out, that you read Nice House by the Lake first, because it is very entwined with the events of that. It assumes that you know everything that happened in Nice House by the Lake. This is a James Tynion book. Tynion is known for his horror comics and his very existential, thought-provoking scenarios. Like I said, unfortunately, because the entire premise of this comic is a massive spoiler and kind of starts giving away what's occurring, I can't say much about it. It ended up as 4 stars. I felt like a couple of the character choices were a little bit too abrupt and over the top. I understand that the reason for that is because of the character's supposed motivation and role in the story, but there were a few moments that kind of took me out of it, including the last beat where a character makes a very important decision. I just felt like it came out of nowhere and wasn't really it doesn't really follow what we've seen about this character so far. So I'm interested in seeing where the story's going, but it ended up as a 4-star, where I think Nice House by the Lake got 5. And finally, I read through Tokyo Fears Rhapsody. Have you ever picked up a book or watched a video and thought, man, this is something that was made specifically for me? That's how I feel with Tokyo Fears Rhapsody. I don't know if everyone's going to enjoy this book, but for me, it had everything I could possibly ask for in a comedy action series. This follows Hachiro, seen here. He is a fear, and much like Chainsaw Man, in this world, fears are these horrific monsters that grow more powerful the more people are afraid of them. So it's very, very Chainsaw Man coded. But on his first outing to terrorize humanity, he comes across ice cream and he loves it. And so from there, he just starts really getting into human culture and like human things and wanting to be buddies with humans. The story starts, he's already in that situation. He's got a human disguise. He is going out and like kind of on a date with this girl, and he gets attacked by a monster. He beats the monster up. These other monsters come and find him. There's a scene where there is basically like a Super Sentai team that's been developed to fight the monsters, but they're terrible at it. And he's like immediately like, oh my god, those guys are so cool. Yeah, they're fighting for humanity. And you get to meet his creator, who like disavows he's like, he's not my son, he's just a creature I created. But the whole time Hachiro's like, oh, it's my deadbeat dad. Thanks, dad, you're so lame. And like, how'd you get into my apartment? You're not supposed to be here. It was making me laugh like throughout the entire volume. It was so funny and so ridiculous. It gave me vibes of early Kaiju number 8, when it was still like a little silly, where he's trying to hide his identity and he's trying to smile and it's all weird and makes people afraid, but he's really like a nice guy. And I worry that this is going to take the same trajectory and just end up being another like military action shonen comic. But it has the potential to be a really funny, like, comedic take on these newer, dark universe shonen series we've gotten, like Jujutsu Kaisen and Chainsaw Man. This trend we've seen in shonen toward this darker aesthetic, I think it has the potential to be kind of the lighthearted, alternative parody of that kind of book. And it was just fun throughout. I'd really recommend it if you're like me and you enjoy those things. But at the same time, like, I'm getting a lot of feelings of Kamen Rider and Guyver and Garo and all these shows that I like that are like darker elements sometimes. The action scenes in here were really well done. It was a lot of fun watching the fight scenes, and he does essentially a rider kick at one point, which was framed really great. So I don't know, like, it's on one hand doing a lot of those action shonen stylings and like a little bit of like the horror comics as well, because there's like this their fears, their horrors, right? But at the same time has that levity and that humor, and so far is very much grounded in that, which I really do appreciate. And that's what I've read so far this week. Coming up next week, well, we're starting September, which means that I'm going to be doing the 30 for 30 challenge. I'll have a video up on that later this week. It's basically to read one manga a day throughout the entirety of September. And then I've started My Friends, which is the newest Frederick Bachman book, and I'm really, really enjoying that. So that's going to be on the docket for next week. I'm not sure beyond that what I'm going to be looking at, but expect to see a lot of manga coming up in the following month. I'll make sure that I've got some novels in there as well, trying to get my 25 for 25 taken care of. So look forward to that next week. Please like if you liked the video, comment down below. What are you reading this month? Are you participating in 30 in 30? Are you doing the 25 for 2025 challenge? Subscribe if you want to see more. And until the next one, take care.